Good morning, everyone. Welcome to 1 Million Cups Milwaukee. I'm Matt Cordio, along with co-organizers. Wow, all of us are here today. Ryan Merrick, Camille Mortimer, Abby Topner, and Greg Barker. So before we get started and hear from Exis, we just thought it would be cool to go around the room, and if everyone can quickly introduce themselves. Jake, we'll start with you.
I'm Jay Price. I'm doing software called One Page Accounting, and also providing the coffee here along with my sons in a real estate business. And as a little add-on, anybody that's starting up or wants help getting initial books set up, I'd be glad to help for a small nominal charge.
My name is Christian. I am a data science student right now getting my master's. I worked for Rockwell for 7 years when I moved to Milwaukee, and I just left this past January, so that's my main gig right now.
Jackie Steinmetz, I own Excelity Marketing. We do inbound marketing for startups and other software companies.
My name is Derek Steinmetz. I work at Excelity also. I build their websites, and I also build small business websites in a new venture we're getting started.
And Javier, from Chicago, but the long way to get here, I went to Manila in the Philippines. I was running a website there and sold it. So I recently moved to Milwaukee and trying to get the feel of the technology internet space up here.
Camille Mortimer, Project Foundry, and I'm responsible for learning at Project Foundry, how what's going on in the learning world affects our platform and how we affect the learning world with our platform. So that's my job.
Pete Reynolds, I do some freelance web development and just doing a startup consulting with electronic medical records.
Jake Tanel. I'm doing event and digital marketing at Triad Creative Group.
Good morning, my name is Daryl Ingram. My company's named Video Score. We connect athletes with colleges, among other things. We do some consulting and advising in the field of sports.
I'm Brian Tafora, Managing Director of CSA Partners.
I'm Abby Topner with Generator. We're a local accelerator program that Dale is actually going through right now.
Hi, I'm Paul Truss. I bring a championship experience in auto racing with major auto manufacturers. I'm an operations specialist. I'm looking for a small company that wants to grow from good to great.
I'm Ryan Cowdery, co-founder of 23Vivi, which is an online marketplace for rare and limited edition digital art, and I'm also in the cohort with Generator. Yeah.
I'm Alex Stanton. I am from Ray's Grain Brewing Company, which is a new brewery out in Waukesha, Wisconsin.
I'm Michael Morales. I'm here from Silicon Valley. The thing I'm focusing on right now is finishing my book, The 1 Minute Expert, How to Share Your Expertise in 1 minute and be remembered for a lifetime. And I've worked with some people here, and the last was Paul. I looked at his marketing sheet, and he is a brilliant genius, but didn't really know it until I pointed things out to him. And then our presenter from last week, Jose Rodriguez, I'm meeting with him Friday for his presentation. There's some just phenomenal things that he didn't quite see, and we're talking about that. So that's what I do, is I look at what is exceptional, what can you make even more exceptional, and within 7 seconds have the reader or the listener get it.
Greg Barker. I'm one of the organizers with the group, just started. I also do business development for a mechanical contractor, JF Ahern. And my side gig is helping startups get the connections they need to get their business moving forward. So if any of you need connections, I'll help you.
I'm Ian Faville, co-founder of Stack41, a data center as a service business company located here in Milwaukee. We had the opportunity to present here at this August forum a few weeks ago. So we provide virtualization and cloud services for businesses.
I'm Jim Brill. I'm developing an app called 911 Enhanced that will fix all the problems that currently exist with calling 911 from your cell phone where they really can't find you, unlike you all think. And I've solved the problem behind that. And working on getting that out, working with some engineering students at UWM to also produce key fobs and pendants where you would press it and cause your cell phone to call 911, and they'll then actually be able to locate you.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. Today we have an exciting presentation from Dale here. Dale has built a really exciting solution for mobile development. And let me get away.
All right, so hopefully it's exciting to you guys. I just started this new pitch deck, so I'll be interested in Michael's feedback actually to see if I can capture anybody's attention in the next 7 seconds. So my name is Dale Willis. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Exis, and we're working on a software as a service platform that simplifies app development for all developers. So obviously some of you in the room understand what that could mean. Some of you have no idea. So I want to start off by walking through a really quick example application of what exactly it means to app developer when they're creating an app and how we can help them simplify it. So if you're an app developer, and we're going to walk through this example app. So once you've logged in, you can see that Dale has 6 messages. Now I'm going to point out 3 problems that we'll have while we work on this example app that all developers will face, and that not one solution that sits out there in the market to provide a solid solution for these problems. So the first problem is that Dale had 6 messages is really not what it looks like, obviously, to the general public. When you're creating this program, you have to store data about it. So this name has some number of messages. That's all the computer cares about. And that data has to be accessible no matter where you are, which means that now you're storing things in the cloud because you have to be able to get access to it whether you're here in Milwaukee or in Madison or anywhere else. Now, storing that data in the cloud means maintenance, and it's someone's maintenance cost. It could be yours on one of your own servers, or it could be something through some service like Firebase, for instance, but someone has to deal with this. And as the developer, you have to understand the kind of nuances behind that. The second problem is that computers are really fundamentally kind of ignorant processing machines. They will only do exactly what you tell them. So as you're going through and it's displaying this data, it has to, as the developer, we have to write code in place that checks and verifies that the name is actually the name, the number of messages is actually a number of messages, and that one user cannot log in as another. If we don't do this, then we'll frustrate our users because we'll lead to errors, and this will ultimately lead to a bad product in the market. Now the third big problem is that many applications, as they start to kind of build and scale, there's a problem that us as developers we have to deal with, and that's one server that's kind of handling all of this information is great up until a certain point, but servers can only process so much information. So when you go from 10,000 to 100,000 users, you have to scale, and you can't just throw another server into the pot. You actually have to have thought about it in the first place and kind of structure your code in a particular way. So these 3 problems I presented are things that any developer would have to deal with. And we took a step back and decided to work on a unique solution that we call Exis to this problem. So what that looks like is we provide 3 aspects to the system. One is a scalability component so that the developer doesn't have to worry about how you actually scale your code. We also host it in the cloud. 2 is how that communication gets to the actual application itself. So we can do validation, permissions, and security checking so that the developer doesn't have to write the code to actually perform those operations themselves. And the 3rd component is that we provide a client-side library that sits inside of the application that the developer utilizes. So what exactly does that look like? Well, I want to show you the last function that I ever wrote while I was working my PhD in computer science at UW-Madison before I started Exis. It's a really simple function. It sits on the internet and you ask it for data and it returns data back to you. But the problem is because it sits on the internet, it's not exactly that simple. I had to add a few lines to get it to actually function properly. So these red sections of code represent the different things that I've been kind of talking about, how to deal with scalability, how to deal with is one user trying to fake being another user, did the person provide me with the right information in the first place? And you can see here that I nearly quadrupled the number of lines that I had to write in order to make this actually work. Now the problem is in our space, for every 100 lines of code that you write, there's on average between 1 and 5 errors. So there's a really good chance that in this code that I wrote, I introduced a bug that won't be caught until you actually put this app in front of real users. And this is a big problem. So using our system, the code actually looks like this. So everything boils down to this one little line up the top here. Because all of these things are so universal, they can be standardized. And because we brought together these key pieces of infrastructure in a unique way, we can actually kind of leverage, they can play off of each other to produce something that's as small as this, yet as powerful as the number of lines of code that you saw. So there's really never been a better time in the market for a product like ours than right now. We're built using a next generation system of WebSockets and microservices. It's kind of the latest standard that you see being adopted by companies like Google, Netflix, and Amazon. Also, at the beginning of this year, Parse, which is our biggest competitor, just announced that they're actually leaving the market, which is going to leave a void for millions of developers. So it's a great time for us to try to jump in and take some market share. From a market standpoint, we're starting with mobile backend space, and so that's a $41 billion market. And obviously, everybody knows that the cloud services markets and mobile app market is very, very large. You don't have to spend a lot of time on that. So this is the team. I'm the CEO, and I was working on my PhD. I've worked on one other startup in the past, and I'm really excited to be able to work on this opportunity. My co-founder is Mickey. He's our CTO, and he's really the mobile app guru. And my wife, Tara Linda, actually is just joining our company as a COO, so I need to update this slide a little bit to reflect that. And so she's really going to focus on the operations and the project management for us. We also have an amazing team from UW-Madison of network researchers and engineers. Everyone up here is a graduate student that has done research in the communication space. So it's a really interesting team that can bring together a great product. From a pricing standpoint, we're looking at a freemium model that's kind of been set in this industry. So many developers, as they're just entering, can use it for free. And then we're looking at kind of tiered pricing structure from there. We're also interested in ideas related to kind of an app store ecosystem. So if anyone has any experience in that, I'd love to talk with you further. So we currently have a stretch goal set of 36% growth week over week, which is pretty insane. But for the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've actually hit that. So we currently have, as of this morning, and I did this last night, we have 293 users on our system, and our goal is to hit 4,500 developers using our infrastructure by May 11th, which is Generator's premiere night. We've also, in the fall, we went through the second iteration of GBeta's system. We've had articles in Cap Times, and when Apple announced that they open sourced the Swift programming language, we were actually mentioned in Wired for having worked on that technology. So the 4,500 number is a scary number that I like to put up on the slide to remind myself that I need to keep pushing further and how exactly I'm going to even attempt to get there. One of the biggest opportunities that we're looking to work with is with Ionic. If anyone's familiar, they are also kind of known as Drifty, and they represent a really large group of developers that we can work with. We're also looking at working with coding boot camps. And the last group that I wanted to point out was Badger Loop. So I don't know if, how many of you are familiar with SpaceX's Hyperloop competition. So it's this international competition where they're looking to kind of revolutionize land travel through vacuum tubes in a pod, which is kind of crazy. But so far it's working, and the team out of UW-Madison called Badger Loop actually placed 3rd in their international competition in Texas back in January. And the reason why I bring that up is because our technology is powerful enough where it can not only be the driving force for mobile app development, but it actually was the underlying communication infrastructure for the Badger Loop team. So at the competition, they were the only team to have an actual fully working demo, and that was because they were using our product. So what we're looking for, we're looking for beta users. We have a lot of users that are mobile app developers right now, and I'm looking to kind of expand that and diversify that set of people so we can really see what kind of features we need to start prioritizing as we get further and further into the market. We're also looking for development studios or coding boot camps, and we're talking to Dev Code Camp down the hall, of course, as well as hackathons. So if any of you know of anything, any events coming up, please come and talk to me. So Exis represents an amazing opportunity in this market. We've got the timing and the talent, and we're building an amazing product, and I'd love for any feedback that you have for me. Thank you.
So what killed Parse?
There's a lot of debate around that, but I would honestly say that Parse's business model kind of set themselves up for failure a little bit, and from my perspective, it was a little bit of the West Coast influence of just driving customer growth, not focusing so much on revenue. There's a lot of developers, so it was really interesting. When we first started with this product, every developer that we talked to knew about Parse and pretty much exclusively used it compared to any of the competitors, and at the same time didn't use it because everyone would release an initial product, but then once you really have something that you're building for scale, it was way too expensive for an individual developer to use. So they would quickly leave to go do something else.
Big connections, right? Kind of
Yeah.
bodies. Okay.
Yeah, they rode on Facebook's coattails for a number of years. And I think it's a reasonably good business model, but in comparison to Facebook's other acquisitions, their revenue represented less than like 1% of Facebook's overall revenue generation. So I think from a business standpoint, it kind of makes sense to pull the plug. Yes.
So if you go out of business, how does that affect all of the developers that have used your platform?
So one of the things that we're working on is that actually a large portion of our system is already open source. So it's something that we're looking to kind of build a community around to contribute to. The remaining portion, we're working on trying to figure out if we're going to kind of open source that and how we want to make that work. But we're looking to basically kind of follow Parse's model where they announce that they're going out of business, they open source kind of their proprietary aspects so that everyone can use it in their own kind of private cloud. So we would follow the same kind of suit.
Doesn't that defeat your revenue model?
Yes, it does. That's why up front what we're focusing on is only doing that from a licensing standpoint. So we work with companies that kind of have a specific need, either through like PCI compliance or some other compliance standpoint from a security standpoint to either do on-premise or private cloud infrastructure. Yes.
You mentioned that you're a UW grad. Is the UW helping you get the word out, spread the word amongst organizations that are also affiliated with the university?
I wouldn't say that the university itself is doing anything directly. They provide a lot of help, and being a UW graduate has a lot of its own perks. When I go out to the West Coast and the Bay Area, there's the Badger Entrepreneurship Forum, and it's a really great group of Wisconsin grads that I've worked with that are always really helpful in any way. And I've sent emails to some people actually asking for help, and by the third email, if they don't respond, I mention that I'm a Badger, and then all of a sudden I'll get a response back from them. So it's definitely been helpful.
You should put that in first.
Yeah, I should. Yes.
Have you seen other competitors pop up now with Parse announcing and leaving the space?
Yeah, we've seen a few other small competitors. The interesting thing about this space is that, as I kind of went through the first couple example slides, everyone is so intently focused on the mobile app market that they're only creating these one or two kind of niche products within that space. So you see a lot of competitors kind of jump into the pool without really knowing how to swim, and they're not able to keep up with the feature set that you need to be able to provide in this market.
I had a question about your pricing.
Yes.
$200 a month sounds very low for anything enterprise.
Yes.
Is that per user number at an enterprise, or what would that look like?
So honestly, we're working on the pricing model right now. And those were numbers that I kind of pulled from competitors' websites, but that would kind of represent one individual application within an enterprise. And it's only, if you notice, it's kind of a throttled system. So if it's, to me, there's a difference between like GE using the system versus, like a smaller, still enterprise, but a smaller organization. Because as soon as you need the performance, then that was the bottom line where it was call me, and we'll work on something else. Yeah. Yes.
At what point does the app developer contact your firm?
Like while they're in the development phase.
Yeah, to what point? At the beginning, in the middle, or when they, for testing or something?
Ideally, right now we're focusing on either from the beginning, as you're kind of thinking about how you would design the system, or kind of in the middle where you've built out certain aspects of the system and you realize that you either don't have the skill set or kind of realize that you needed more features than you were initially. You basically bit off more than you could chew. Yeah. We're looking to add features where we would be able to work with kind of developers that have already released a product, but we're not quite there yet.
So you're obviously looking to raise money. You're a generator.
Yes.
So what's the plan? What's the long-term plan? What's the exit? What are you talking about?
We're looking at a strategic acquisition. Within this space, there are a lot of infrastructure as a service providers that are trying to compete, excuse me, with Amazon's AWS, Amazon Web Services. And the problem is that AWS is churning out so many features that these other infrastructure providers can't keep up. So we've been in contact with a few of them that are looking to kind of have that competitive edge, and that's kind of my target from an acquisition standpoint.
How many years out?
If I had to throw a dart at the wall, I'd say 3. That's actually pretty average within the comparables in the space.
As a layperson that has to deal with developers, if you were to give an elevator pitch that I could go back to my guys and say, you need to talk to this guy, what would I say?
So if you're delivering it verbatim to developers, then I would say that we essentially provide the best aspects of Heroku, Firebase, and Socket.io, if you can remember those 3 things. If you're kind of the layperson that's relaying this information, then I guess I would say that we provide the tools that simplify all of the aspects that make developers not want to be developers at the end of the day. The boilerplate code, the security, the kind of corner cases that you don't want to have to think about, but you do over and over and over again.
And you're ready to go?
You're
ready to deliver on?
You had that target of over 4,000 clients. What's kind of your biggest challenges to get there right now that you see?
Being able to spend enough time kind of focusing on customer-facing kind of marketing strategies. So we officially released our Ionic support infrastructure, and we did that on late last week. And as a result of that, our website views and everything else is more than like quadrupled because of their clientele, and we're looking to kind of leverage that in other spaces. It's just finding the time to really measure that and hit the sweet spot. Yes.
What would be your keywords in a Google search when people are trying to find you?
Build mobile apps, build mobile backends.
So you build the app, or you correct the app?
I correct. So I guess it would more likely be how do I build mobile apps? How do I build mobile backends?
Are there communities or people that used parts that are like freaking out about it going away, that being there, being active would be an opportunity for you to say, we offer some of these features, and like just being involved and like being a valuable part of the community, and then like when it fits, suggest that they come over as a way to get to their 4,500.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the parse thing has threw me, it's really thrown me through a loop. Like I still remember where I was when I opened up my phone and saw that they were closing, and it went from happy to sad to scared like 6 times in a minute. Yeah, that's one of the big things that we've been debating, because it does represent this really awesome community of people that don't pay for things, which is why they shut down. So we're kind of like flip-flopping from that perspective. So I think there is a good opportunity there where we can kind of define like that particular niche. Yes.
So I'm struggling to know kind of exactly kind of where it is that you sit in terms of what you're providing to the developer. So maybe just as a corollary, what did Parse do that you do? What does Parse do that you don't do?
So we cover, so from Parse's perspective, the 2 biggest things that everyone uses are, I need to be able to allow users to register for my service as a developer, like create an account, and then I need to be able to let them log in. That's typically a very large chunk of code that a developer would have to write, and that's very standardized. So Parse provided kind of what's called an API to solve that problem. The secondary component is from what's called mobile backend as a service, and that is data storage capabilities. So very simplistic. I have this data about a user, or I have information that I want my users to be able to access. And so we kind of encompass that aspect as well. The reason why we're unique is that we actually came from, so as I kind of focused on the slide deck for a second, that we're all from a networking and communication background. So why we're unique is that we actually built our system around kind of the communication aspects of things. So when you're making a call to a system, if you're familiar with like CRUD infrastructure, so there's kind of this application theory where I'm going to make this thing, and then all I want it to do is like manipulate some data objects that are sitting around. And Parse was like that, and that's great for kind of a common case. But there's a lot of situations now where you look at the average app today, and there's a lot of social mechanisms in place. So things like, I want to send this message to all of my followers, and it doesn't follow that same kind of mantra that you would have typically seen. And so that's where you need a little bit more communication infrastructure or real-time communication aspects, systems like Socket.io. And when you look at what the developer needs to do in order to implement that, they would have to go out and learn a whole other library and kind of learn how to structure things to take advantage of that as well. So we're providing all those things together in one uniform way. Yes.
All for $200 a month.
Potentially.
I'm interested in the whole freemium idea and whether there's actually going to be change in the investment community about their interest in this. Whether there's been enough inability to convert it to paying customers, the pressure will reduce a bit to have a freemium product. We've resisted the urge, but it has been hard. Investors, particularly from the West Coast, have this as part of their belief structure. So do you think there's an opportunity right now to help that conversation in relationship to Parse and what happened to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a certain amount of kind of, from a customer perspective, there's a certain amount of kind of activation energy that you can hit with developers. So I can go out and tell you, okay, well, I'll drastically simplify the code you need to write. That'll interest some people. You talk to managers, you'll have better ROI. We often say that we're kind of open sourcing things and providing back to the community. That'll get people to kind of contribute. From the freemium standpoint, I've talked to a lot of people, especially after Ionic was released, or we released our system using Ionic, that did come back and say, like, I understand you need to keep the lights on. And so they're a little bit more interested in kind of paying smaller amounts of money for that. But I think until kind of the overall competitive landscape changes to reflect that, it'll be difficult for a kind of small incumbent like us to step in with that kind of model.
transitioning.
We're hopefully kind of trying to find a sweet spot of providing enough to get you interested in using it, to develop the app with it, but then once you've put the app out there in the market, you need to have good enough performance to really have your users be happy. And so from that perspective, that would be kind of, creating drawing a line in the sand around what that looks like is kind of what we're looking to work on right now. Yes.
I don't really know the developer mindset, but is there a mindset in the developer world that I don't need you, I gotta do this myself because I gotta prove I can? Is that one of your biggest hurdles in that world?
I wouldn't say because I guess maybe it's I want to prove I can. Some people do it for learning, and developers in general are really terrible, fickle people. I can say
So
that.
they won't release it and go, this is an easier way, or anything is an easier way, I don't have to.
I think that a lot of, from my personal belief is that you're going to have a certain segment of people that want to do it to prove they can. But what we're kind of following from that standpoint is the simplicity and the elegance of like the Apple model, where you can very easily have some other type of computer, and you can sit back and say, why does everyone go out and buy a MacBook that's twice as expensive? And we could debate over why that is. But
so that sounds like your whole story you need to tell, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Why work so hard?
Yeah.
Actually, you can go ahead.
What?
Well, I thought you might have a question.
Oh.
I'm just going to ask the last question.
Oh, okay.
So what's the difference between your free and paid that's going to get these developers we've been talking about to actually put out that money?
So as I was kind of mentioning a second ago, we're looking to have it focus around performance of the system. So the typical website today, if I'm quoting my numbers correctly, needs to be in order for a human to not recognize a change in something, it needs to take less than like 400 milliseconds, 300 milliseconds, something like that. As you start to scale and you have more and more users, it's very difficult to have that happen within our free team, basically. So once you've kind of seen traction within your own app, then also at that point, you don't care as much to give us $15 a month. It's hopefully less than whatever you're making from your users.
How are your conversion rates from free to paid right now?
We're adding the payment system as we speak, so technically 0.
So I'll just wrap it up. We always ask, what can this community do for access? And I think you kind of touched on it in your presentation, but you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is, like I was saying, more than anything else is a greater diversity of people using the system. So I learned more from the 3 hours when I first decided to sponsor the Badger League team. I learned more from spending a couple hours with them and kind of understanding their needs than I had from a month of emailing random people and interviewing them. And I think that was mostly because I had been targeting mobile app developers, and they represented a different group of users that needed different features and everything else. So the more that we can find those, the better.
Great. Well, thanks, Dale.